They tore down my bridge before the sun came up. Tuesday morning, 6 a.m., the sound of diesel engines echoing through the valley, and by the time I stumbled out of the house in nothing but boots and boxers, 80 years of family history was crumbling into the creek like it had never mattered. That bridge wasn't just stone and timber. It was my grandfather's hands, his sweat, his stubbornness, laid across Willow Creek in 1944 when America was still fighting overseas and steel was rationed. He built it with what the land gave him: rock from the riverbed, timber from the hills, and somehow it outlasted every storm, every flood, every generation. Until that morning, I remember the smell, crushed limestone and wet diesel, and the laughter of the people who thought they'd done something righteous. They stood there filming on their phones, proud of themselves, as if they were performing some civic duty. And the woman leading them, her name was Margaret Pierce, president of the Maple Hollow Estates HOA, self-appointed queen of everything she laid eyes on, was smiling like she'd just solved world hunger. She didn't know yet that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Because what none of them realized, what not a single one of those 87 homeowners knew, was that I owned the only other road into their precious gated road. The land's been in my family since 1939. My grandfather, Henry Hank Cole, bought it for a handful of dollars and a lifetime of work. He built the farmhouse, the barn, and that bridge, the one they crushed under a bulldozer like it was just another obstacle on their landscaping plan. When I was 16, I helped my dad replace the planks. He told me, "You build something right, son. It'll outlast you, but you've got to respect the ground it stands on." I still hear that every time I drive across gravel. So yeah, when I saw that bridge go down, I didn't just lose wood and stone. I lost the last piece of the man who taught me what it meant to build something that lasts. It started simple, like all stupid wars do. A new development, Maple Hollow Estates, went up on the old Carson farm down the hill. 87 homes, each with matching mailboxes, solar gates, and the kind of HOA that treats rules like religion. They needed a sewage easement across my land during construction, so I signed the papers, got 12 grand for it, and figured that'd be the end. Then she showed up. Margaret Pierce, 61, realtor, politician wannabe, perfection addict. The type of woman who drives a white Tesla, wears her initials on everything, and thinks no trespassing signs are just invitations to negotiate. She came to my porch one April afternoon holding a 30 days. I actually laughed. "Ma'am, that bridge is on my property. Your HOA has no authority here." Her smile didn't move. "We have documentation that it's abandoned county infrastructure." When I told the deputy what happened, he shrugged, said it was a civil matter. Margaret even handed him a folder. "We removed a flood hazard," she said sweetly. "We actually saved the county money." That's when I realized something that would define everything that came after. She didn't see me as a person. I was just a line on a map she could erase. I walked back to my porch, sat down in the dust, and decided right there that if she wanted to play with property rights, she was going to learn what that actually meant. The next morning, I called Tom Riley, an old friend turned property lawyer. He took one look at the photos and said, "Ethan, this is the cleanest case of property destruction I've ever seen." We filed a lawsuit for $78,000, the exact cost of rebuilding the bridge, plus historical value and emotional damages. Margaret's lawyers tried to counter with something called adverse possession, claiming the bridge had been in public use long enough to belong to the county. But I had decades of maintenance receipts, every plank and screw logged. Dad always said, paper beats memory in court, and he was right. The judge threw their claim out in 3 weeks flat. It felt good, but it was only round one. Margaret didn't back down. Instead, she launched a smear campaign that would make a politician blush. She posted in the Maple Hollow private Facebook group, painting me as a deranged old man blocking flood safety improvements. She hinted I was unstable after losing my wife 2 years ago. Within hours, the comments exploded, hundreds of people calling me selfish, unstable, unfit to own property. It spread to Nextdoor and local news pages like wildfire. Another way. He was quiet for a second. "You've got a plan, don't you?" "Working on it," I said. "And it's going to hurt." I started calling in favors, surveyors, old county clerks, engineers I'd worked with back in the day. One of them, Sarah Lynn, worked in the county planning office. She called me in a whisper. Ethan, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Margaret's been getting every permit she wants fast-tracked by Commissioner Frank Dorsey. They are close. Bought a condo together in Florida last year. I froze. You're saying the county commissioner's approving property deeds so old they smelled like dust and nicotine. And somewhere in that mountain of paper, I found gold. Maple Hollow's sewage treatment plant was operating under a conditional permit that had expired 14 months ago, and both their extension requests, signed by Commissioner Dorsey. I called Maria Torres, a former intern of mine who now worked as an environmental engineer. Sure, it hits the right target. 2 days later, I started getting citations from the township. Unlicensed junk vehicle, unsecured brush pile, illegal signage. Each one came with a fine, $150 a day. If not fixed, the inspector, a nervous kid named Tyler, finally confessed. Mr. Cole, I was told to check your property daily. By who? He didn't answer, but I already knew. Margaret thought she could bleed me with paperwork, but all she did was hand me more evidence of harassment. And while she was busy playing petty, I mailed Maria's complaint form to the state. Because if there's one, my mailbox was 6 inches too far from the road, my firewood stack was a visual nuisance, and my gravel driveway generated excessive dust. Margaret Pierce had turned bureaucracy into a weapon. Every word from poor Tyler, the code inspector who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I took photos, time-stamped them, and sent them to my lawyer, Tom. He said, "This is harassment. Plain and simple. Keep collecting. We'll bury them in paper before they bury you." But honestly, I didn't need a courtroom yet. I needed patience, because the gears I'd set in motion were already turning. The Department of Environmental Protection had my complaint, and I knew exactly what would happen when their inspectors reached Maple Hollow. One Sunday afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. A man stood there, early 50s, nervous eyes, holding a folder like it might explode. "Mr. Cole," he said softly, "my name's Dennis Crawford. I'm the HOA treasurer." That caught my attention. I invited him in, poured him coffee. His hand shook a little when he set the cup down. "I've been the treasurer for 6 months," he said, "and I've found some discrepancies. Consulting fees for $1,000 a month. No approval, no vote, nothing in the bylaws. And the demolition of my bridge? She'd paid for it with HOA funds. $28,000. She falsified the meeting minutes afterward. I tried to stop her, but she controls the board." I asked why he was risking this. He took a long breath. "Because she fined my wife $500 for planting the wrong color roses. And because I'm tired of watching her bully everyone. I made copies of everything, shook his hand, and told him he wasn't alone anymore." That night, I looked at the pile of evidence on my table: expired permits, falsified financials, commissioner signatures, harassment citations, and realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. And ends in a county office. We met at a diner off Route 29. She showed up with a recorder and a legal pad. I brought a binder the size of a cinder block. For 2 hours, I walked her through everything: the demolition, the harassment, the expired sewage permit, the commissioner's relationship with Margaret, the HOA money trail Dennis had uncovered. By the time I finished, she just sat there, staring at me. "Mr. Cole," she said, "this isn't a property dispute. This is a scandal." I smiled. "Then let's tell it." 5 days later, her headline hit the internet. The commissioner issued a half-hearted denial, and the county ethics board opened a formal review within 48 hours. For the first time, Margaret wasn't in control of the story. I was. Just when the flames started dying down, Andrea called again. "Ethan," she said, "I verified Dennis's documents. The embezzlement piece runs tomorrow." And when it did, it blew up bigger than anyone expected. HOA president accused of self-dealing and fraud. The article detailed every crooked transaction: inflated invoices, fake consulting fees, family kickbacks, all traced back to Margaret. By noon, the Maple Hollow Facebook group was chaos. Residents were demanding her resignation, threatening lawsuits, calling emergency meetings. By nightfall, the district attorney's office announced a preliminary investigation. The next day, Dennis texted me. Board voted 4-1 to remove her. Residents screaming. She walked out in silence. I sat on my porch that night, the sound of the creek whispering in the dark, and felt something I hadn't felt in months: control. But I wasn't done. I'd been saving something, one document that could change the entire game. Months earlier, while digging through old records, I'd found a 1953 plat map showing Oak Ridge Road, the narrow gravel path connecting Maple Hollow to the county highway. Turns out, it was never deeded to the county. It was private. My property. Margaret had demolished my bridge, and I owned her only other way out. Tom and I drafted 2 filings, a notice of road closure, effective in 30 days, and a notice of easement expiration for Maple Hollow's sewage and power lines. Both were perfectly legal, both publicly recorded, and both set off alarms across the county. Access, I told them calmly. That's not my problem. It's private property, always has been. They can negotiate access at fair market value. By noon, the story leaked. Andrea called, half laughing, half in disbelief. You own their only road? Sure do, I said. And their utility lines cross my land illegally. She laughed again. This is poetic. I smiled. No, Andrea. It's engineering. Within a week, Maple Hollow descended into chaos. Residents held emergency meetings, property values nosedived, panic spread like wildfire. Dennis sent me voice memos from inside. The meetings, people shouting, demanding to know why nobody told them their access road wasn't public. One woman yelled, "My mother's 80. What if an ambulance can't get through?" Someone else finally showed up for that overdue inspection. Their sewage treatment plant failed. Miserably. The state issued a 60-day order for repairs or shut down. That meant every family in Maple Hollow was about to start paying to truck out their own waste, $400 a month, minimum. Revenge wasn't supposed to taste this sweet, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it just a little. Then the night came when I realized Margaret wasn't done fighting. It was 2:30 in the morning when I heard chainsaws. I ran outside, heart pounding, and found 2 men cutting down trees along Oak Ridge Road, dropping 60-year-old oaks across the gravel path. "Hey," I yelled, running toward them. They froze, then bolted into a white pickup, tires spraying gravel as they sped off. I filmed everything, their faces, the truck, the chaos, and called 911. When the deputy arrived, he recognized the rental company logo on the truck. Next morning, he called me. "We traced the rental," he said. "Paid with a credit card under Mark Pierce. Margaret's son." I didn't say a word for a long time. "Then, we pressing charges?" The deputy sighed. "We can prove he rented it, not that he did it. Use it as leverage. It's dynamite in court." Tom agreed. "Save it for mediation. Drop it like a bomb when the cameras are rolling." That night, I sat in silence on my porch, the moon glinting off the creek, and thought, she's unraveling. The township called for a public mediation, open to the press, residents, everyone. 2 weeks. That's how long I had to turn evidence into justice. I gathered my allies, Tom, Ryan, Sarah from planning, Maria from environmental, even old Judge Harold Meeks, retired but still sharp as ever. We turned my kitchen into a war room. Maps spread across the table, laptops open, coffee brewing nonstop. Tom tapped his pen against the legal pad. "Ethan, you've got leverage, the road, the expired easement, public sympathy, the media. The question is, what do you actually want?" I looked at the photo of my grandfather on the mantle, sunburned face, hands rough from stonework. "I want my bridge rebuilt," I said softly. "Properly, historically accurate. And I want a public apology. I don't care about revenge. I just want what's right." Judge Meeks nodded slowly. "That's the right instinct. Push too hard, and you become the villain. Give them a sliver of mercy, just enough to look like the better man." Ryan snorted. "She bulldozed his family bridge, Judge. Mercy's off the menu." The judge chuckled. "Maybe, but good men win twice. Once in court, once in conscience." We spent hours drafting the proposal. $78,000 in damages for the bridge. Full reconstruction by licensed contractors using period materials. A written apology published in the township paper for 2 weeks, signed by the HOA board. A renewed easement at $500 a month. For 20 years. Guaranteed emergency access for fire and ambulance, but no free use for residents. If they refused, I'd close the road and terminate utilities in 30 days. No threats, just consequences. The night of the mediation, the township building overflowed. People packed the hallways, the smell of burnt coffee and sweat hanging in the air. 3 TV crews set up tripods. Composed, gavelled the meeting to order. Mr. Cole, you requested this hearing. The floor is yours. I stood. No notes. Didn't need any. I'd lived this story. I clicked the projector. On April 16th, it was destroyed without notice, without permits, without cause. Next slide. The bulldozer mid-swing, Margaret and her board members filming. Here they are, recording it. Laughing. The room went silent. Then the Facebook screenshots, her calling me unstable, the code enforcement citations, the harassment trail. And finally, the video. 2 men cutting trees at night. But she didn't look up. I turned off the projector and looked around the room. During all this, I said, I discovered something. The only other road into Maple Hollow, Oak Ridge Road, isn't public. It's mine. And their utilities? Their sewage and power lines. They've been crossing my property illegally for over a year. Reporters scribbled furiously. I could close that road tomorrow. I said quietly, terminate their easement, shut off access. Legally, I'm within my rights. But I won't, because that punishes innocent people. All I want is fairness. I laid the papers on the table. Here are my terms. Pay damages. Rebuild the bridge. Publish the apology. Renew the easement at market rate. End the harassment. Or on Monday morning, I close the road and the lights go out. The room erupted. Reporters shouting questions, residents yelling, the sound of chairs scraping the floor. Supervisor Chun banged his gavel. 15-minute recess. Margaret's lawyer pulled her aside, whispering, gesturing wildly. She sat frozen, eyes fixed on the table. When they came back, a thin, pale man, Alan Patterson, the interim board president, stood up, voice trembling but clear. Mr. Cole, he said, the board accepts your terms in full. We'll compensate you, rebuild the bridge, issue a public apology, and renew the easement under your conditions. What happened to you was wrong. On behalf of Maple Hollow, we're sorry. The room broke into applause. Cameras flashed. Chin nodded. Settlement accepted. This mediation is concluded. Margaret stood, face blank, and walked out without a word. Nobody stopped her. People parted like she carried a plague. I didn't watch her go. I just breathed, for the first time in months, without anger in my chest. By June, the new bridge was rising from the creek, built by a stonemason named Vernon Hale, a craftsman who treated every rock like a chapter in a story. We used the same creek stones my grandfather once, lifted with bare hands, the same kind of oak from my own land. It took 2 months, and when it was done, it looked exactly like the old one, only stronger. On the dedication day, I expected maybe a handful of people. 60 showed up. Families, kids, even some from Maple Hollow. Someone brought fried chicken, someone else lemonade. A little girl painted flowers on a rock and asked why the bridge mattered so much. I told her, because bridges connect people, even after they've been broken. She nodded, like she understood more than most adults ever would. In September, we held the official dedication. A bronze plaque now stands by the rail. Cole Bridge, built 1944 by Henry Hank Cole, rebuilt 2025 by the community. My daughter flew in from Oregon. My grandkids ran across the bridge laughing, the sound mingling with the rush of the creek below, and for the first time, I felt peace. I used part of the settlement, $100,000. She said, my dad says standing up for what's right is how you build things that last. I'll never forget that. Maple Hollow changed after that. They elected a new board, passed transparency bylaws, posted all financials publicly. Residents finally learned what their HOA should have been doing all along. The county tightened its permitting oversight, and Commissioner Dorsey quietly resigned for personal reasons. As for Margaret Pierce, she sold her house at a loss and moved to Arizona. I haven't heard her name since. Last spring, I got a text from Patterson. Community potluck next Saturday. You're invited as guest of honor. No pressure. I smiled, typed back, I'll bring potato salad. That weekend, I walked down to the bridge. The stones were already gathering moss, the wood smelling faintly of sun-warmed oak. A truck passed, driver waved. I waved back, and I thought of my grandfather and how he used to say, you don't just build bridges out of stone. Boy, you build them out of trust. He was right. That bridge had been torn down once, but in the end, it connected more people than it ever had before. So that's my story. A woman with too much and believe that right still means something when you refuse to back down. Now I'll ask you, what would you have done if someone destroyed what your family built with their own hands? Would you fight back? Would you forgive? Or would you, like me, let the truth do the talking until justice had no choice but to listen? Because in the end, bridges aren't just meant to carry cars. They're meant to carry stories. And this one's going to last.